Hey everyone. So, I wanted to talk about something today, and it's going to be a little rambly, so bear with me. There's something on the channel we haven't really talked about much, and I feel like it's something that needs to be maybe hashed out a little better. I want to talk about the concept of internalized transphobia. For those who don't know, internalized transphobia is a phenomenon where, generally speaking, a trans person will experience some sort of transphobia coming up or engage in some type of transphobia based on their own internal biases, their own cis-sexist ideas given to them by society. The article we just covered where a conservative trans woman who supported Brexit wanted trans people to carry cards so that they could identify themselves as the good transes is a perfect example of internalized transphobia. The idea that people's IDs are not real unless the state says they are is insanity. The reason why I got my ID changed, the reason why I do everything I do, is for myself. It's not selfish, that's just the way it is. I do them for myself. I got, my hair grown out. I got my ID changed. I got my social security card changed. All of these things were things I did because I wanted to for myself, not because they were necessarily to make the state validate me. They were required by the state to change certain documents, which I wanted. But it's not about those assholes validating me. And so I use that as an example because internalized transphobia is something that I think we don't talk about enough and how it comes up. One example of this was the RGR Doe debate. I'm not trying to rehash all that drama, but let's look at it for just a second. During that debate, both against Vosh and Doe, RGR said that they would get back, she would get back to the gender debate later because she refused to use its pronouns and only referred to Doe as they, them. As some kind of negotiation of pronouns, right? I'll tolerate the non-binaries, but I won't use its. The fact that she could condescend to think that her opinion matters in this regard is insane. And it shows a demonstrable level of privilege and internalized transphobia. The idea that I can tell anyone what their gender is insane. It's why I live by that value. Are there examples that could be brought up theoretically out of realm of absurdity possibilities where I could change that, or I'll have a possibility outside of the norm? Sure. We hear this when people bring up shit like Nazi gender. But the thing here is that what I want you to understand is one of the reasons why we have the values we do on the channel is to avoid internalized transphobia. But internalized transphobia is not just something that is easy to avoid all the time. Sometimes you'll be looking through... One second. My spicy food came back to haunt me. Sometimes you'll be looking through the Selfie channel and you'll see pictures, and people look great. Do they look like the gender they're saying? Sometimes. Not always. There are early pictures of me in my transition where I don't look great. Hell, you want to go by the harassing comments, I still don't. According to them, I'll never be a woman, my chin is never feminine, and I have, a giant forehead, and my voice doesn't sound feminine. I am just a man in a dress, yada yada. Those people are insane. It's whatever. In reality, there is a way in which sometimes when we see a trans person early in transition, and this can be either medical transition or social transition, the problem is that sometimes our own biases creep in. Tiamat, insane is a legal definition, not a medical one. Please focus. Jesus. The fact of the matter is that when we're kind of looking at other individuals in the trans community or we're engaging with them in a particular way, we have to understand at some level that we're going to have biases come up. If I see someone who appears femme to me and that person's non-binary, one of the reasons why I may accidentally misgender that person is because there's natural cis-sexist born assumptions of how I see that person. I like to believe, even if I can call that stuff out, that my perception is accurate. Go ahead.
Oh, and just not born as in like born with, but that these things have been, you know, you've been socialized in this way for so long, right? That these systems in that we are used to engaging in.
Maybe a better way to say is born into.
Yeah, born into that situation, right? Because every interaction that you have, whatever gender connotation is there, is being built up in, you know, your internal schema of and how you interact with the world, right? That stuff keeps, you know, compounding on each other, right?
Yeah. So the thing is that you're sort of socially programmed in this way to view gender as a certain way. This is generally what women look like, though there are exceptions, and this is generally what men look like with some exceptions. So when you start getting into the playground that is gender, and you see a bunch of kids that aren't the same as you, who may be somewhere in the middle or off the grid entirely, there's a tendency to have anti-trans attitudes come up within ourselves. Some of those could be the belief that everyone should medicalize. This is the stuff we see from people like Blair White, Rose of Dawn, Calvin Guerra, who, you know, engage in either hate campaigns or have made videos that were demonstrably false as means by which to push their own internal transphobia on others. These people are not trans because I say so, because they're somehow absurd. Hey, cis people, laugh at them with me so you don't laugh at me. That's what that is, right?
Well, I think on a almost like an ordinary day-to-day level, right? This feeling of, like, we notice this with, like, upvotes on Reddit, right? People post their pictures, and if they're not, you know, fitting into the conventionally pretty idea, right, there's not really an acknowledgement of, wait a minute, what tells me that this thing has, that, like, people have to look a certain way anyways, right? You know, and we know that, like, during transition, our bodies are going to be changing, you know, and that takes time. That process will take a lot of time. But, you know, to view that person as not pretty, not good enough, or not deserving of an upvote, you know, that stuff can, I think, come up for a lot of people.
Yeah. So I think the thing that I want to be really clear with everybody is when we're talking about, oh yeah, like passing privilege, right? So passing by some level is a privilege, right? So like we've talked about this before a little bit, but for your ability to pass, what has to go quote unquote right? You have to either have the money and ability to have surgeries. Your body might be, say if you're a trans woman, already somewhat petite. You might be smaller, maybe short for someone who's, you know, AMAB. There's a number of things that go into this, you know, youth, age, things like that. You know, all that stuff can go into whether people will see you as your gender, because as Condra's video, The Aesthetic, points out, cis people can kind of take or accept your gender based on what they experience it as. They can either reject us, in which case they reject our gender, or they can accept us, in which they do. Sometimes that's performative, sometimes it's not. Internalized transphobia is one of the reasons that people will either hesitate on transitioning, that is, they think it's wrong based on their religion. Internal transphobia can be the reason why we may see somebody and think that they're not performing gender correctly, right? So if somebody is, you know, someone who is, you know, in the trans femme category and they don't act particularly trans femme, is act in being big quotation bunnies.
Maybe they still have a lot of hair. They're, you know, maybe they don't shave their legs or something.
Maybe not even physical stuff, right? What if they're like, you know, very much walking around like, yeah, they look femme, but they also have like a lot of, you know, masculine mannerisms, such as like a butch lesbian, right? If you're a trans femme butch lesbian, how's that work?
No, I've definitely heard of like spaces where like you have to perform femininity like enough and in a certain way, and if you don't, then people kind of side eye you.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so one of the things that I think is really important for us to consider is the idea that our own personal perceptions are still growing and changing and in process. And so rather than kind of go through like a whole bunch of stuff or try to, you know, talk about this in a more academic way, I guess I just want to talk about this from a community/personal way. And that is, I think it is a really good idea for us to go through and acknowledge our own biases. Oh, Stokes the Theorem, thank you so much for the gift of 2 tier 1 subs to Chronic Scene and Shalibity. Thank you. First time watching, very late the stream. I just learned what discourse means. Haha, I'm ESL. Oh, very cool.
Nice.
Makes sense. Hi, Wreckage. Welcome. So, yeah, so what I want to kind of make clear to everybody in this situation is what about internalized transphobia do you struggle with? If you're a trans person, you could be binary trans, and I'm fine with that term. I know some people give it shit. I've decided I'm just going to go with it because it's a good descriptor, and because this tendency to try to discredit or like get rid of binary trans people feels really shitty. There's some people who genuinely identify that way. Non-binary folks or xenogenders, anywhere in the spectrum or outside of it. Where does internalized transphobia hit for you guys? Where is it difficult? I wouldn't mind people putting that in the comments of this video. I also wouldn't mind hearing from chat. What is somewhere you struggle? So yours is xenogenders, Wreckage. Are you saying you struggle with those? I guess I'm asking everyone to consider this idea because what is it you struggle with in this regard? Because again, I don't think this stuff should be hidden. I don't think it should be something we should be ashamed of. I've talked about on this channel before that I think shame is a personal violence. It's when we engage in with ourselves, where we take a story and we beat ourselves up with it. Right? So the thing is that I want to know where that is, because I think it's very important for us to deal with this and get it out there in the open. Where is internalized transphobia in your life? Is it something that you engage in? Is it judgments? Is it the way you see certain trans women who are posting pictures trying to build up their confidence? Do you not say anything shitty, but you still have like a thought? Do you actually challenge those thoughts? Right? Like, I think it's important to look at that stuff because, as we've talked about, let's say the preferences video, for example, this stuff gets very complicated. It's very hard to know whether something is an inborn trait in the sense that it is genetic or part of your psychology from the start, or whether it's something that's socially constructed, that is socially programmed, right? So, for example, if I see a trans woman who's midway through transition and she still has fairly what are traditionally called masculine bone structures in her face, but I still see her as a woman, I still see her as, you know, I still see her as this feminine person, and I notice I get hung up on the bone structure stuff. Do I just roll with that? No, I question it. I push for it. I look past it. So Wreckage said earlier, xenogenders. So one example of this would be is me and Zena's argument for xenogenders, and you please feel free to jump in at any point.
Yeah, I was going to.
Oh, go ahead.
Xenogenders, I think, was a harder one, because that came up a lot more recently, and a lot of the knee-jerk reactions was, what's going on? Like, I don't really know. And so there's just like kind of like that aversion to this. Like, this sounds kind of wild and out there. And also, you know, I tend to be the person that does a lot of activism and educate, you know, the average person who has a hard enough time understanding gender and non-binary in the first place, and trying to understand that to them is a train wreck, especially because when you run into people half the time, I only get about like 5-10 minutes, and I'm like, this is a whole like life-changing thread here. Like 5 minutes is not enough. And so there's a lot of people like, what do I even do with that? And I think Jess especially started pushing a lot on this as well. And that feeling, like wanting gender to be play. When I get down to it, and wanting gender to be, if I want everybody to be able to, you know, express themselves freely and happily, what does that actually mean? Okay. And for me, a lot of that value does mean that, no, I kind of had to confront this with xenogenders, right? We need to leave room for people to experience and describe and express themselves in whatever way works with them. and again, it's their internal stuff. If I want to see them for who they are, for this person in front of me, as much as I can know them from the outside, then I need to be able to leave room for that.
Another way I might think of this too is can cis people understand what the experience is like to be trans? No, by definition. That would be like trying to get a virgin to explain what sex is like. In the same way, if you're not someone who is in that sort of xenogender spectrum, how could you possibly know what that's like? So we have to assume at some level that the person is coming here in good faith, and maybe this is the language they're using now, maybe this is the permanent language. But Zena and I have talked about this before, is like sometimes you look into into yourself, you do personal introspection, and you try to go, all right, am I masculine, am I feminine, am I somewhere in between? And what you get is error. Or 404 not found.
Right. Well, that's a lot of what I've been going through lately as well, is especially, there's a vlog a little while ago going over like masculine experiences, and having to go through and be like, what does this actually mean? And there still is a lot of parts of me that I'm like, I can't use masc and femme to explain, right? And if you're like me and those things didn't make sense to you, well, maybe there were other large concepts or large other things that informed your sense of self instead of masculine and femininity. And for me, that's colorful. Do I really know how that fits into the map of xenogender? But no. But again, being able to do at least that base exploration at least helps me start to have better language for what's going on. And it comes back to letting gender be play, right?
That's something we talked about a lot on this channel, is the idea that gender is play. Gender, from our perspective on this channel, is that gender is what is called an emergent self-schema. That is, schemas are internalized rules based on a way of being or how you wish to be, how you should be in a given situation. We have different schemas for different situations. You act differently with your parents versus how you act with your friends. Those are schemas, right? Self-schemas are internalized rules about ourselves. Emergent ones are ones that are constantly being discovered or edited as time goes on. Gender appears to be that. This is why somebody like myself, who came out as a binary trans woman, later came out as trans femme, and then later is sort of in this sort of trans femme fae metaphor thing-ish mess. Gender is play. It is an experience of exploring yourself, no different than any other part of self.
And play in like the kid way, right? What are kids doing? Every time they play, all of what they're doing is play. All of their education is play. That's literally how they learn, how they experience the world. It's all play. All right? And so there's kind of like a whimsical kind of like, freedom to, hey, I can just play around with this. I can just find out what happens. There's a curiosity there. So do you want to go through chat?
Yeah, let's go through. Chronic says, I struggle with trans misogyny, and your videos have been really helping me to understand it. Awesome. I'm glad to hear that. Cool. Ad Astra said, internalized transphobia prevented me from getting medical help I needed for the longest time. I was so worried I wouldn't be trans enough. Can we just, first off, that makes perfect sense. And also, can we murder this idea in the crib of trans enough?
No, yeah. And the idea that like microdosing isn't an option, it totally is. Like, I need to be clear. You can piecemeal stuff.
Or not do anything at all.
Or not do anything at all, right? You can pick and choose whatever is right for you.
Think about it as the buffet table, not like a freaking line. Like you can go and take what you need. And unpack it. Self-expanding. So internalized transphobia hits me as a trans femme, falls into the stuff you've just said about not appearing femme enough. So here's the thing. Are you Devious, are you talking about yourself or other people? So if not appearing femme enough is a thing that's really about you or the other, I'm gonna just put something out there. There is a difference between internalized transphobia and dysphoria. So one of the things I had to map out, and I've talked to Zena about this, is there'll be sometimes when I see non-passing trans women, and because of some of the features being similar to my own that I struggle with, I will sometimes experience dysphoria at seeing them a certain way. It's like that video of the one lady getting really upset in the GameStop. Because those behaviors are in my brain coded as masculine, I get dysphoric. Now, if I was trying to say this is not how a trans should behave, that dysphoria then becomes internal transphobia. Does that make sense? I also did want to back up on an idea real quick, and then feel free to jump in.
Oh, I was just gonna say dysphoria is in like being dysphoria for being projected almost, right? Would that
kind of. It's not really a projection. It's more. I would actually say to some degree it's a rejection or maybe an introjection of the situation. I know that's a hard one to say what the actual action is.
I've been right. Introjection might be closer than projection. Yeah.
Because projection would be putting it on them, but you're actually taking what's happening to them and then comparing it to yourself. So it's maybe projection or reverse kind of projection. I don't know. It's a weird thing. Introjection would be closer. Introjection feels more, yeah.
Yeah.
I did want to say this too, is that one of the things that's a personal go-to for me, Zena said, I was the one kind of leading the charge on xenogenders. There's a reason for that. Anytime I have any kind of resistance come up about a group, I immediately challenge it. If I notice that I have a very strong resistance to a particular group, be it xenogenders, plural people, whatever, my goal is to understand that thing and break it. I grew up in a family where my grandmother was excessively racist. She even trained a Great Dane to bark at black people. And I thought the N-word was just a regular word. That's how bad this was. I had to grow out of that, and I had to really make good friendships and connect with people because I realized that what I had been trained in was wrong. And slowly but surely, every time I've challenged one of these things, I realized I was wrong. The prescriptions that society had given me were incorrect, or my family, or what variation they're in. So I just wanted to bring that up, as that's why that charge got led. It's the same thing with bringing in plural kit and doing all that stuff. These were all things I led the forefront on, not because Zena doesn't care about this stuff, but because I have a natural tendency that when I feel that in myself, I have to attack it.
Yeah, this is one of the things where Jess is like, nope, we're going to go try this now. Which I think works out, a lot on the server at least.
Yeah. Yeah, Diva, so let me know your thoughts on that. I'll see if you responded. Morningstar Council, I struggle with standing up for myself on its pronouns. I don't value weird pronouns enough. They're the ones I most want. As fiery as I am online in defense of its and other pronouns, I lose all as soon as cis friends show difficulty. So here's the thing. When you say they're showing difficulty, Morningstar Council, is it that they are showing difficulty because they're being resistant to using it, or because they're making mistakes? Because if they're making mistakes, all that is a communication error that can be repaired. It's a logistical issue, right? So to me, it's just working with them and staying patient, and also break any of the ideas that you are inflicting something on them. This is something I've seen trans people do. A lot of my trans boys do this thing where they're like, oh, making someone go by my pronouns is somehow doing something. No, it isn't. You're asking for quick, accurate communication.
God, isn't that a lovely piece of misogyny that's like still left and coming out? Oh.
Well, not even that, but it's a weird form of internalized transphobia where it's like, by enforcing my pronouns, I'm somehow I would be somehow doing harm or engaging in conflict. Good.
So I say that because I noticed that a lot of the messaging that I got, particularly for females, or was people saw as females around me, was that you standing up for yourself, you having your own independence, you having your own needs, your own thoughts, was in a lot of ways seen as doing something to somebody else. Okay? Because some men should be the ones that are doing the independence and shit. And so there's a weird way that a lot of that stuff for me got carried through.
Yeah, Hannah says, internalized transphobia, not having the body where I can dress femme without being perceived as a girl, like gender feels less as play than some of my trans mass colleagues. Yeah, and so the problem is that, this gets into medicalization, this gets into, again, these cis sexist notions. The thing would be is that how do you dress femme while still owning masculinity? To me, obviously, you can take work from drag queens, you can also take stuff from femboys. There's a way that you can own masculinity that way, but even then, part of it is, I think, actually holding that idea in your head that you are still masculine or non-binary. You're not a girl. If you're wearing a dress and you're in some ways wearing clothing that is feminine, there's an incongruity there, and you can act from that place. But I get the internalized transphobia there, is it feels like it's almost an invalidation. Zena, I think, struggled by that for a while. Wearing femme clothes, but then them making you feel perceived as a woman.
Yeah. I mean, that is a hard one. Yeah.
I'm not sure if this how much this falls into it, but I definitely have problems cognitively with its pronouns just because I'm so used to pronouns being used to dehumanize people. Those pronouns being used to dehumanize people to consider them valid. I don't let it stop me from using it as pronouns, but it's absolutely a disjunct. Yeah, I think you have to think about it as less objectifying. That is, you are.
That is a really, really common one. I do see that one a lot because, especially for the 80s. So here's the deal. Like, a lot of our elder, queer folks really did... It was used to dehumanize them. It was the thing that was said when some monstrous act was going to happen, right? Or they were going to get beat up, physically harmed in some way. And so that is the place where, like, some of that came from. That, that cultural knowledge did get transferred down to us. And so I think when people are using the pronouns for themselves, we got to hopefully separate out some of that trauma, put that over here and be like, you know what? Yeah, throughout history, that did come from there. But what people and individuals are doing with the it pronouns is coming from a different place, or coming from a very unique place to that individual. And that's different than what the, what our elders have passed down to us about this word.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? Yeah, I really do see that one a lot. And I also had that knee-jerk reaction about it pronouns. That one did come up in my mind. How do we handle that? Especially, and you can think about this too with like reclaiming language.
Mm-hmm.
That would actually be a really good example of reclaiming language.
See, I come at this from a different angle, and that is that so from a Zen perspective, from the perspective of sort of witness or subjective consciousness to objective, and this may be more abstract for some people, but for me, what it comes down to is I experience everything around me as objects in awareness, not that they are being objectified, but that they are objects. Like Zena exists as an object in awareness, that is, because it's not the subject, it's not my perspective. And so in that way...
This is just the word for the thing, right?
Yeah. So like you use they, them, am. So to me, those are coded to that object. Does that make sense? And so it becomes less of objectification and more of something else.
Well, and I would say too, if it helps, seeing if people want to tell you about its pronouns, maybe that might help give your brain a new way to think about it, What else we got?
I'm struggling with this at work. I want people to use only they, them, but I've got she, her right next to it in writing. So take it off. Adrian, just take it off. Like, you don't have to go with their notions. And the thing is like, if the idea is I want to give cis people like an out, for me, the thing I have to do is I use she, her because it makes it easier on parents and things like that. And I still feel a connection to she, her, even though I also use fey, fair, it, its. So the thing is you have to ask yourself is she, her a compromise to do your job? Or is it something that you're just holding over because of that internalized transphobia, that you're not trans enough to really enforce your they, them? That would be a thing I would kind of look at. Mm-hmm. Resistance, mistakes are easy, whether they're mistakes or mistakes, but outright saying they struggle with something, that's the wall against. So, but all they're saying is that's a mistake. They struggle with doing so, but you just remain patient and keep correcting them, right? Like, that's the thing is that what you're describing is they struggle with it. Okay, they struggle with it. It's a skill. Just remind them it's a skill. They got to work on it. Morningstar Council. Jocelyn said, I called Zena by the wrong pronouns once. I've been kicking myself ever since. True.
No, I was going to go back, like a wall against expressing myself. I guess I'm curious what you mean. I did meet a person that was very, very vehemently against, or at least had to tell everybody about their personal deal with this particular set of pronouns and how that should be valid. It seemed like in that case there was other things going on that they were trying to accomplish with that argument. It was really weird. So sometimes there's other shit going on.
Yeah.
Not my favorite, but don't worry about calling you by the wrong pronouns, Gislin. It's not that big of a deal. That probably gets to be like the least out of anything. And you know what? People oops all the time. It's fine.
Yeah, Adrian, I get that struggles. I would say just try to find the people who are going to be open to that first, and I would work with them and slowly build up that confidence. That's the way I would handle that. Viriona said, it is still really my biggest struggle at this point that I don't feel feminine enough to allow to call myself a woman, and I need to realize that the gender police only exist in my head. I also don't feel comfortable correcting people on my pronouns. Again, like I haven't earned them yet. I would say that you have to ask yourself, again, what is womanhood? Is it a presentation, like performativity theory would say, or is it a way of being, a way of perceiving oneself? This is why I like self-schema, is that the parts of me, like, you'll see me here, I'm scratching my head, I bite at my fingers occasionally. Like, these are traditionally not very feminine ways to act, but I still do them. Why? Because I don't care. Like, they're feminine because I do so. I know tons of women that do these when they're not being observed. Like, so part of it is recognizing it not from the perspective of you haven't earned your gender yet, that you are your gender. In fact, here's what I would say is the deep cut. Everything you're doing right now, Viriona, is feminine. You're starting from the back end of the process. It's not that it has to become feminine or you have to earn femininity. It's that you already are feminine. The only thing is you have to make the outside align with the internal space. That's it. Leo Child says, my issue is not being able to have a binder and not being a hem flat-chested. It's hard to feel masculine enough. Most people think I'm too young to decide who I am yet. But I feel like out of all the people in the world, I know who I am. And I would agree, Leo Child. In fact, a recent thing came out from Florence Ashley arguing exactly that the only people that can really decide this for kids are, in fact, kids. I would agree. I'll just say the people that won't let you have a binder are dumb and silly. And if I could, I would get you one. So yeah. And again, there's other things. Look for compression tops out of Tomboy X. That could be a really good mid-ground to kind of.
You can kind of call it a sports bra, basically. And in fact, you can do exercise in it. That's actually really why I like it.
Techno Kitty says, I still really struggle with my need to classify people into neat little boxes. I've gotten better at not forcing my prescriptions as what they should be, but it's still an ongoing process. It's always going to be one. Human beings naturally are meaning-making creatures, and then we take those meanings and through heuristics turn them into different categorizations. So it's important to just recognize that. The one way to do it is just not take those categorizations seriously. They're your categorizations. Good and bad, right and wrong, they're just things you're making, things that you're perceiving, and then just sticking, this number of red rocks in this pile and a number of yellow rocks in this pile. It's a thing to recognize. Adrian said, yeah, using she, her as a compromise. I'm so terrified that people will just keep using she, her anyway, and it will hurt more somehow that I've made it clear I don't want that used. That's when you go to HR or you go to your boss. So the thing is, if you're working, I don't know what format you're working in, but the thing is that unless they're complete cocks, they have to abide by that. And so the thing is that I would say, I know you're terrified of it, but the people that'll use she, her anyway are people you should just cut out. If they're coworkers, avoid them. Don't go near them. Not because you're scared they're going to use she, her, but because you're allowed to be angry that these people are inflicting a violence. That's what they're doing. If you've been really clear, like, hey, it's they, them, and it's not just mistakes, it's not just them learning, but is them actively being resistant? No, fuck them. Hannah, not the same. Leo, not the same, but I have some binders, but I have a lot of back and neck pain, so I wear them only very occasionally. It's fair. Again, even if you have man boobs, you are still a man. If you identify as a man, you are a man. Sorry, just the way it works. I can usually tell if someone's being an asshole or making a genuine mistake. True. There's no universal correct way to be a woman. Manhood or womanhood is play. True, Spectacular Schneiderman. True. For me, gender isn't really behavior but perspective. Agreed, Chronic. My mom wants me to have one but doesn't think I'll wear the binder properly. Then show her you know how. Go through and find a wiki how as well as some different things. Show her that you've done the actual research. Send her the videos. Right? Like, send her videos showing, like, I have now watched 18 videos on how to wear this properly. At what point am I more educated than you are?
Yep. Also, a lot of the places that sell binders, like, is it GC2B? Like, their help page has a whole list of, like, here's how you do it. Here's what you watch out for. Hey, Mom, no, really, like, this information's out here. Like, I've got guidelines. We've got this. Yeah.
Yeah, Adrian said, thank you, Jess. You're right. It's just a matter of doing it. Yeah, I would say that you just make it clear to your bosses and HR that you're doing this, that you are non-binary and you're going by they, them, or however you identify. And just pushing for that. And again, the thing you guys have to understand is, if they use the wrong pronoun intentionally, that isn't a failing of your gender. Your gender is valid. It's a failing of them as being decent people. You have to stop internalizing this. This is where the internalized transphobia kicks in. You think you're not valid or not trans enough, or you're somehow this freak. Good, be a freak. Be as freaky as fucking possible. Be a goddamn degenerate.
I am chuckling because...
Oh, because of the pile of leather collars? Yeah,
Can I...
No, get out there. Be a hyena. True.
Be a hyena. Be a furry.
Based and hyena.
Be whatever you want to be. There's a lot of chokers and collars in the house right now.
Based and hyena pilled.
So when Jess is like, be freaky, I'm like, this is the life here. It's good. It's all good.
So I'm going to say this is that, again, you guys got to stop internalizing this as though you're doing something wrong by enforcing this. You're just making a bodily autonomy argument. This is your body, your life, your way of being, and you get to decide how you want to be perceived. That's not controlling others. That's just clearly laying out what you want. And if they can't abide by that, that's fine. They've made a choice. They can go fuck themselves. Right? Like, that's a thing. Where was the Christian V comment? I'm not seeing it. Someone responding to Christian, but I don't see a Christian.
It's been a little minute in the chat, I think.
Religious reasons would be chronic. For example, someone who is, Christian, believing that, no pun intended, that being trans is bad, and so acknowledging transness is sort of imagining sin. By the way, stop breaking combos. I will eat your face. And I have a 1,000-pound bite force, according to my persona. So yeah, no, people's religious views can easily affect their way of being. We had a, I'm not going to name him by name, but we had a person in our Discord at one point who was a bit cringe, a bit hard to deal with. And one of the issues they had is they were trying to reconcile being a variation of Christian with being trans. And there's no way to reconcile that. Christianity of every form is incredibly rigid in its performance of gender. I'm sorry, they don't work. If you want to go to somebody in that faith that is going to be accepting of you, try Satanism. He's incredibly accepting. Just the most validating motherfucker. Just saying.
I do have some friends who've worked in a variety of other faiths, to kind of help bridge that stuff and be like, no, really, actually, this is the thing, but they're in a couple different parts of it, and I forget where. Just has done panels with a Satanist before, actually. That's the
don't. Yeah, there is a book out there with my dead name.
No, don't do it. We can't. We probably shouldn't go any further.
No, we shouldn't.
I shouldn't have done it. Shouldn't have done it.
Yeah, you thought about it for a minute, and you're like, yeah, you're about to fucking dead name me.
I wasn't going to dead name anything. I just don't want to get us doxxed.
Yeah.
There's no doxing more than we already have, because, things
it depends on how. It depends, Chronic, how, Catholic. I guess that's the thing. Ask your clergyman if Satanism is good for you. The answer they're going to give you is no, which means you should absolutely do it.
I need you to know, my mom, when I was like, I don't believe in God, I don't believe in Christianity, all right? And at least not, not her version and shit of everything. She was like, so what do you believe in? Do you believe in Satanism then? Or do you believe in Satan? And not Satanism, but just Satan. She couldn't imagine a world where I just had other beliefs in the first place. She was like, no. The opposite of Christianity is Satan, and you must believe in Satan and doing Satan things. That was the only framework she had.
I believe in the Fermi paradox and that we're going to run into something real quick. Like a car running into a fucking bumper. Watch our Dead Space video for the explanation on the Fermi paradox. God damn it. I support the giant moons made of dead flesh. Anyway, moving on. Just giving tons of quotes here. I for one welcome our new undead planet overlords.
Fair Rona, that took skills. Okay, so.
Well, yeah, because you're not doing it at gunpoint. That's my issue with most religions. They try to make you moral via gunpoint. I mean, essentially, the free will given in the Bible is basically just a coercive, right? You can do whatever you want, but do what I fucking tell you. A good way example this would be, you walk into a casino, right? I hold a force multiplier to your head, and I say you can play any game you want, but you have to play a game, or I blow your fucking head off. Guess what? Technically, you are free to choose which game or not, but you still have to play a game or not. That's kind of most religions' free will. Just saying. So with that said, I just want you to think about, how does internal transphobia affect you? How do we open up the discussion about how that works? And how to talk about it? Like, I don't want to call anyone out who's like not passing or is, you know, xenogender or whatnot and try to put that on them. It's not really our need to trauma dump. But I do think it's important that in the right conversation, in the right group, I think, to bring these things up, because I think that's how we deal with them. Mm-hmm. You sanitize these things by bringing them into the light. Having an open dialogue is a good idea. And we'll probably cover this again. I do want to do a discussion on trauma dumping, probably not tonight. But with that said, is there anything else you want to add to this, or?
No, I think we covered a lot of it, yeah.
Cool.
Just keep exploring, guys, right?
Yeah, and be okay with who you are. Remember, it's not your problem, it's theirs.
Mm-hmm.
Hate to bring up that one, like, Captain America quote, but it's kind of true here. Like, you know, I forget, I'm going to butcher it, but it's basically like, you know, if they're trying to get you to move, tell them, no, you move. Like, no, you don't have to compromise with these people. So, with that said, we'll love you guys. See you next time. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Also, consider donating to us. You can support us on our website, transgirltherapist.org. You can also help us on our Patreon, link below, or you can become a member here on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching.